Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Alchemy Lab. My name is Matt. I will be your alchemist this evening, and I am here with author Adam Misner. Hello, Adam.
Misner.
Meisner.
Doing good.
That's I should have asked. I should have asked before we started. Adam Meisner. Hello, Adam.
Hello.
All right, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
All right, excellent. Okay, so for people who don't know who are you and what do you do?
Well, I guess I am an author, and I write, I guess primarily fantasy. But yeah, I've written a collection of short stories and a romance novel, and then this is going to be my first fantasy novel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming out with Slayer in the Wide Valley.
Okay, and there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And this is on your website,
Yep.
adammeisner.com. All right, so we have Slayer in the Wide Valley here. And you say it is a fantasy romance.
No, it's just fantasy.
Ah, fantasy. Okay.
I
And
mean,
then if we
there's
go,
romance in it,
okay.
but
This there looks like there's some romance in it, based on
yeah,
what's going on
it's
the cover.
funny. Uh, It's funny because a couple of people were asking if it was porn, and I was thinking there's kind of this sort of like ban on attractive women in media. You see it like
Hmm.
Mass Effect Andromeda and like the new Horizon Zero Dawn 2, whatever they called it.
Hmm.
And I was thinking, I was like, oh, I should have a attractive girl on the cover, and
Hmm.
I was thinking people would be like, oh, sweet, but a lot of people, it's like too much shock, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and she's a
Yeah,
redhead, which means that in the Netflix adaptation she'll be black, which is great. There'll be some diversity there.
very true. Yeah, Neutron Bohr was my artist, and I told him that I kind of wanted to capture the sort of energy that like retro fantasy had,
Yeah.
because whenever I saw like a poster or something for like really old school fantasy art, I always had this feeling like I want to know what happens in that story, because this isn't a series, it's a standalone. And I always kind of, whenever I saw that kind of art, I was always like, I'm really curious about that specific story. So I kind of wanted to capture that sort of sense of adventure and stuff. And he was excited to go at it. And then yeah, and I just kind of let him sort of run wild. I had like some notes about what the characters would be wearing and what they'd look like and stuff. The hair is actually an interesting point because it's not actually supposed to be like a redhead.
Hmm.
I I sort of was inspired by that like H.P. Lovecraft thing of like describing something that can't be rendered, you know?
Hmm.
So it's like he would like everyone's memeing on the color out of space because they just made it purple, but
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, originally it was a color you can't imagine, a color that doesn't exist, a color that isn't shouldn't be real. He's always
Hmm.
going on about cyclopean like non-Euclidean geometry.
Hmm.
And I thought that was a really interesting technique, and it really showed me what you could do with writing, because I was kind of sort of the opinion that there's limits to writing, where like animation does something better and live action does something better. But
Hmm.
then I was reading his stuff and I realized, like this is something you couldn't do in another medium, and so maybe I haven't explored what I can do in writing enough. And so I wanted to try and use that same sort of technique. And then when it came time to do the cover, I was like, well, the main character should be on the cover because I think that's probably what's most interesting to
Hmm.
the eye. And so I explained how her hair was, and I gave them many descriptions where I said like her hair is like all the colors of autumn, and these various descriptions shows up in the book. And he was like, fantastic, like I can't wait to give that a shot. And he
Hmm.
that's what he came up with,
Hmm. Oh,
because
okay.
you can see where
Yeah.
the sun goes through the hair, it's kind of blonde, and then it's like red other places, it's like a little more
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It does. Okay. I can see that. Yeah.
yeah,
Where it sort of shifts where the light's hitting it.
right.
Yeah. Very nice. Okay. And then moving further down, then we have we have this would be the romance.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, it's a romance set in Disney World,
Okay.
and mine's is certainly a place where a lot of people complain about Disney World being a setting. But
Well,
when I was young, right, none of this stuff was going on, and
right.
I wanted to sort of preserve that memory, of like all the nice parts of Disney World
Mm,
because I noticed they're taking away a lot of stuff that I used to love.
yeah.
And so I sort of wanted to preserve that kind of magical feeling it had. But yeah, now the company is known for much darker things.
Yeah. No, if you're of a certain generation, yeah, it's certainly a massive shock now where it's gone. And I remember when I went to, I think I was about 8 or something when I went to
Mm,
Florida, and it really did have that just brilliant feel of like, oh my God, everything I love is here
yeah.
in this place. And they had a like a life-size Imperial Walker there.
Oh
I don't know if
yeah.
they've still got it, but I remember looking up at that and going, oh,
Yeah. And if you wait
hey
long
one.
enough, it would shoot steam. It would go doo doo.
Ah, oh, I don't think I saw that.
They
Didn't
they
wait
got rid
around
of it
long
at
enough.
some point. I guess it broke and they didn't want to fix it. They
Well,
did this big firing of engineers and safety people. So when we went on a family vacation, and my parents took everybody, took my brother and his now wife, and me and my girlfriend, and we were kind of like it felt bad to go to Disney, and so we were
mm,
like, why don't we just go to Universal because they have some cool stuff, and my my brother was like, oh yeah, all the rides kept on breaking down, and like we had to wait so long. It's like,
mm,
you know,
uh, well,
but
ever since it feels like ever since I don't know when the rot kind of set in there. I feel
mm,
like when they bought Star Wars, it just kind of it's
I
almost
don't
like they got
know.
something they didn't expect. Like they got a disease with Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't know. Um, it's hard to think because the parks are always very separate from the media arm
Mm,
for a long time, and like
yeah.
even we went in 2018, I think it was, and everything was fine, other than vaping. Everything was kind of the same.
Okay.
A lot of people vaping and smoking around their kids, which was a big bummer, but you weren't supposed to, right?
Right.
So people would yell at them. Like the people at the park would be like, "Oh, you have to stop." But other than that, no, it was about what I remembered. It still had that magic at night. I
Mm,
got to take all these cute pictures with my girlfriend by the castle and stuff at night, and Epcot at night is also kind of magic. But
mm,
yeah, getting rid of
mm.
Splash Mountain now. There,
Really?
yeah.
What did someone die on it?
No,
A,
no.
a log flume's racist. I don't know why
Yeah,
are they.
yeah, yeah, it's racist. You got it. It only took you two guesses. It's did someone die or yeah, no.
Or is
They're
it
gonna
did
retheme
someone
it like
die
the
or is it racist?
Princess and the Frog or whatever, the worst the worst
Oh,
2D Disney movie.
okay, right, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've gone from Lovecraft to Disney, which isn't like it's not the biggest, considering
Mm.
Disney now, it's not the biggest sideways step it could have been.
Disney's now cosmic horror.
Yeah, basically, yeah, the all-consuming cosmic horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got into Lovecraft quite recently. I think it was The Color Out of Space, the
Mm.
movie, that got me into
Okay.
it, even though The
I
Color Out of
haven't seen
Space
it.
was purple. Yeah, it's good. It's a good.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean
I want to
Nicolas
watch it
Cage
then.
obviously is
Say again? Did you say Nicolas Cage?
Nicolas Cage obviously is a bonus because he
He's
plays
in it?
yeah, he plays the dad. He plays the dad of the family.
Okay.
Um I forget the name of the family now. But yeah, he plays the dad. And I think he's the only oh Tommy Chong's in it as well. They're the only two recognizable people in it. Tommy Chong
That's some
plays
casting.
yeah, Tommy Chong plays Tommy Chong. He's just smoking weed out in like a shed in the woods.
Okay.
Pretty standard. But like you said, yeah, the color out of space is just like pinkish purple. So, oh, this indescribable color of madness and insanity. You know, it's purple. Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah. Wait, did you have you read At the Mountains of Madness?
no, not yet. I got the like the compendium of his stories. I'm kind of working through them when I sort of get the chance. I haven't gotten to that one yet. That's one of his longer
So
ones, isn't it?
that's a novel actually. It's his only like full length. And I thought
Ah.
it was shocking that his full length is actually my favorite
Hmm.
because Andrzej Sapkowski started with short stories and then he went to like a fantasy series.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it didn't have that same like tightness, that same like sort of tightness that the short stories had. And
Mm.
he
He's
doesn't
the Witcher guy, isn't
really,
he?
yeah, Witcher guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And his style doesn't really lend itself super well to like super descriptive stuff and like I don't know world building exactly.
Mm.
Um, not like it's weird because in the short stories you imagine this big world, but then once he has endless amounts of space to describe it, he doesn't. So it's like you know. But then shockingly, Lovecraft took to like novel length like really well, and I thought that book was like super strong.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what he did with longer work. I think the longest one of his I've read might be the Dunwich Horror,
Okay.
which was I think that's sort of 8 or 9 chapters, maybe.
Hmm.
And that
I
was
know.
good. But
I think I've read most of them, but I can't remember a lot of them. Like I can't remember Horror at Red Hook, and I know people talk about that. I remember little
mm,
snippets, but I don't really remember it as a whole. My favorite is the Statement of Randolph Carter.
mm, I may not have read that one.
It's the one where it's like kind of short, but it's like the this guy is roped into assisting his friend go to this archaeological site, and then it's like a tomb, and then he goes in, and then he keeps on calling to tell him what he's seeing, and then because they have this like rolled out phone line, and then he's just like, "Oh, I guess I shouldn't give." I mean, it's a
Yeah, yeah.
Lovecraft story; you can kind of see where it's going, but you
Right.
shouldn't go in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's told through it's his statement to the police is like,
Mm, nice.
but
Okay. Oh, need to. Okay. I'll have a think because there's that one. The bunch of one. I mean, I haven't read a bunch. Like there's At the Mountains of Madness is one. Rats in the Walls is another that I haven't read that I want to read, and that one now. And um, gosh, From Beyond. I'm curious about because I've seen the movie again, From
oh, okay.
Beyond, and it's mental 80s cheese, low budget with it's the same guys. Well, I think it might be the same director. I'm not sure, but it's a lot of the same cast that were in Reanimator.
Okay.
Um, which I guess is another one, right? That's
I think
Herbert
so,
West is
yeah.
a Lovecraft guy, Lovecraft character. Yeah.
Yeah. This if you want to experience Dagon, there's a video by Steininger Art that's pretty good. It's like
Hmm.
he does it's like pictures and he has someone reading it. Like he drew all the pictures, the illustrations.
Ooh. Very nice. Oh, okay. So with sort of discussions of Lovecraft, then have any kind of cosmic horror or that kind of horror has that style crept into any of your work, or may it creep in?
You know, one could make the argument for a couple things. Like if I'm trying to make something scary, I am naturally going to think about what was the scariest stuff that I've read.
Mm,
Um, but not exactly. I think like with my first collection of short stories, I had a lot to choose from that I wanted to like look through, and then the ones that were the best and most well like developed were the darker ones. And so I ended up with kind of a collection of dark fantasy stories without trying to.
mm,
And then when I wanted to shift my style to better accommodate novel writing, I I wanted there to be like more room for uh, more like descriptions of scenery and like really like just a more verbose style, I guess. And so then I was thinking like there's not a lot of super positive content out there, and there's especially not a lot of positive romances because so often it's
Mm,
just like a love triangle or cheating or something.
yeah.
And it's funny because I was consuming as much romance content as I could, and like to its credit, Japan has a bunch. But I was asking my parents like, what's the best like romance movies you've seen? And they're like, oh, you should watch You've Got Mail. And then like in the
Hmm.
first like 2 minutes of You've Got Mail, they're having an affair is like the intro sequence is like they're like messaging on AIM or something, like having an affair like with someone else. And
Mm.
then she's talking to her friend. It's like, ha ha ha, can you cheat over the internet? And it's like, wow, that didn't age well.
Yeah. The answer is yes. A categorically yes.
Yeah, it's like, oh, but it's just letters. And it's like, yeah, it's but the original of that movie was really good. It's an adaptation from like an older story, and the original movie adaptation was The Little Shop Around the Corner, and it was like super cute. It was like
Mm.
a manager and then his employee who are pen pals, but they don't know it at first, and then the guy realizes and doesn't tell her, and they
Mm.
hate each other in real life, but they like each other over like pen pals, and so he can't tell her because she hates him.
Right.
And she's like, "Oh man, you're such a piece of work. You know, I know this guy who's so much nicer than you." It's like, yeah. Um, but yeah, so I ended up writing a romance kind of devoid of all that sort of, you know, stuff that'll make you come away from it feeling bad. And
Yeah.
then and then I when I wanted to do like a fantasy thing, I was thinking I kind of wanted that upbeat feeling, but I wanted to contrast it because there's a certain amount of contrast in Treading Water, but it's without swords and blood, there's only so much grittiness you can put in. Exactly.
Hmm. Right.
So there's a certain amount of contrast. Like you feel it like a roller coaster, but I you get to go way harder into the darker elements. And for that, I kind of looked at some of the more gritty stuff that I'd read, like The Witcher and H.P. Lovecraft, to try and get something darker to contrast and try to meter out like a pace through the book.
Mm. I think it's important to have. I think romance is it's an important. I mean, it's a good way to balance those things out, especially in the kind of the darkest places. If you have that bit of light in it, it kind of evens out the tone of it, and it's
Yeah.
something that I don't see a huge amount of. I mean, a
Mm.
lot of the kind of the sort of romance plots and the romance kind of stories that get popular, especially nowadays, they're always sort of very lust focused, and they're very sort of
Mm.
focused on the
Yeah.
more kind of the animal side or the forbidden love
Right.
or the forbidden lust, really.
It's a very Hollywood take on romance.
Yeah, it was a very kind of cynical take on romance, I would say, as well.
Yeah.
It's
I The other useful aspect to it, as far as like a book, is it sort of offers you an alternative plot. So
mm,
during the more so like I guess I kind of thought of it sort of in the sense of uh like I'm remembering playing Dragon Age, where you have these side romance plots that you're pursuing,
yep.
and that sort of offered you an alternative quest line that you're progressing towards. And
Hmm.
so that kind of fits nicely. Like if you're trying to do a roller coaster, even on the like when you're doing the more gritty stuff, you're probably making more progress.
Yeah.
So then when you're doing the lovey-dovey stuff, you're not or when you're doing the more positive stuff, you might not be making progress towards the plot. So by having a romance that kind of fits into those rises, you're always giving this feeling of moving towards something. So
Mm. Yeah, I find well, it's sort of the character story as well as the overarching kind of plot. Yeah. And I found like well, you mentioned Mass Effect Andromeda before. I think that's maybe the only bit of Mass Effect Andromeda I liked. that I felt was like halfway well done was like sort
Yeah.
of the romance plots or the just kind of like the friendship plots as you kind of build the friendship with members of the crew.
It's good to know
Because
some part of that is still left alive.
well, yeah, well, I mean, you have to have something like that because the overarching plot of that game is just so trite and kind of a carbon copy of the first game. Yeah, and
Mm,
the characters even are kind of carbon copies of their counterparts in the first game.
mm.
It's yeah, it's yeah. We're in a different galaxy, but everything's exactly as it was in our other galaxy, basically.
Yeah.
Very unimaginative, which is unfortunate with in sci-fi. I like a bit of imagination in my
Yeah,
science
I
fiction.
love Mass Effect 2 is like my favorite is one of my favorite games. I really I thought that was so cool. What they
Mm.
and I used to read all the codex entries for all the weapons. Like every time I picked up a weapon, I'd read the codex entry first to read the lore for it. I was more interested in that than whatever stats it had.
Mm.
And God, the concept that you're using a hyperdrive to shoot someone is so cool. You know, that's how the bullets
Yeah.
are propelled in that. It's like that's
Mm.
so cool. And the range is limited by the bullet itself breaking apart against air friction. It's just like that's a gun. That's a
Mm.
fucking gun. If that's your pistol, like okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate because it's sort of like lightsabers where it's so cool, but then they stick it on everything, so it gets a little bit not as
Yeah.
cool. Like I think well I guess my what I mean is like Jedis are cool, but that's the only cool thing, right? They
Mm.
don't have a lot of other like they didn't have a bunch of classes for you to play as. Like if when people do a Jedi RPG, it's like you could play Han Solo or you could play a Jedi, and there's not like a lot of there's not people are typically fighting over being the one Jedi because there's not enough there can't be that many Jedis or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, I
Mm.
mean, yeah, no, Mass Effect 2 was super good, and then I was heartbroken with 3. It was so confusing. Like they added in a guy from the Jersey Shore basically as like one of the characters. You remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
the
vaguely.
Jersey
Yeah.
Shore is popular. Like, oh, don't worry, this guy will sell. And then they put in like someone from X Play or like Attack of the Show. So there's like a host of G4 lives on your ship, and I was like, get her off my boat.
Yes. Oh, it was her. She was the journalist. What was her name?
Uh, oh, like the Jessica Chobot, is that right? Is that a
Oh, the
name?
the actual person.
Oh yeah, I don't know what the character would have been called.
Yeah, I can't. Jessica Chobot. It's just Jessica Chobot is who it was.
Yeah.
You're not playing
And then
character. You're playing yourself.
they made your ship worse. They put security things you have to go through. It's like
Yeah, like hiding loading screens kind of thing. I
yeah, and
think
that
it
you trip
was.
over wires and stuff. And then like the lore was so tragically disappointing. Like you get a shotgun and they're like, oh, they reduced the capacity. It's like, how do you reduce the capacity? It's one block of metal. Like, what does that mean? Like it's one block of metal, you shave off pieces and accelerate it through a hyperdrive. Like,
Yeah. Are you
yeah.
shaving
And
off more of the block? I don't know.
like how much would you have because they say like the lore for the machine gun is it has around 200,000 rounds before you have to reload. It's like how much did you shave off?
Yeah, it's just like a brick. It's just throwing a brick at.
That would I'd be okay with that if it was called the bricker and you just shoot someone
Yeah.
with a brick and they're like, yeah, low capacity, you gotta reload.
Yeah. Yeah. Just don't mess with it because it'll blow a hole in someone half the planet away.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I liked the third game in I think the one thing
I
I
like
did
melee
like about
attacking.
the third was that it kind of when you walked around the ship, it didn't have Garrus calibrating the main guns for the entirety of the game. It had him like move around and like interact with people in kind of like set little dialogues and things around the ship. Like they have him I think they had him comparing notes with it might have been with Jersey Shore, man. Like comparing scars or something with him. Or they had him having his own romance with Tally if he didn't romance Tally or Garrus. Those two would cop off
Right.
in the front of the
I
ship.
remember that.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just these neat little kind of touches that they just sprinkled in.
Yeah, it's always tough because when you put together something as big as a game, there's going to be people that really put their blood, sweat, and tears into it,
Mm,
and they really, really tried hard.
yeah,
That wasn't everybody, right? So it's like,
right. Well, the other thing, like working for EA, you never have enough time to make
mm,
something. I think they had about 18 months or something to make it, and it's
mm,
shocking that it came out in the shape it did. Considering, I don't know how long Andromeda had. I mean, it probably had. I can only imagine it had longer, but I know they had to like scrap the game when they got to a certain point and start again, basically, because they were trying to do procedurally generated planets and
mm.
things like that. And it's, I don't know, how do you fit multiplayer into that? We need multiplayer because it's a
Yeah.
thing.
Then they had, yeah, I mean, three had so much stuff that was just I could write it. I should have written my capstone like paper on how bad Mass Effect how much Mass Effect 3 disappointed me, I should say.
Mm,
They had a turret section to shoot down a Reaper. Uh
yeah,
they
that
the
didn't
lore,
even
the
that didn't
really
even have any impact because you could just
yeah.
not shoot the Reaper and it
Uh
still went. So if it's the one on the Geth planet,
yeah.
yeah.
It was there the lore, the writing was what disappointed me the most, but it's you know, because you talk to someone and be like Garrett, you talk to Garrus and he's like, oh, the Reapers are hard to fight because they have no supply lines. And then you get the Geth to join you, and then you ask the person in the war room, like, what are the Geth doing? They're like, oh, they're attacking Reaper supply lines. It's like, what are they resupplying on? They're ships. And yeah, I mean, it was nice to see people with Game of Thrones get really upset and blame the writers
Mm,
because it at least shows that people care about the quality of writing.
yeah.
So I am a bit concerned with that, where like the Hollywood writers are obviously quite bad, and they're going on strike now, and people are making fun of them because it's like, well, you don't do anything. And so
Mm,
something people are doing to make fun of them is to use Chat GPT to write better stuff than what they've written. And that is kind of funny, but at the same time, that is a real threat to humanity as like a whole. It's like replacing people's jobs with
mm.
robots, you know?
It's funny and a concern at the same time. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. It is funny that that BuzzFeed, I think BuzzFeed went under, but they initially fired all their journalists and were like, we'll use Chat GPT to write top 10 lists.
Yeah.
And it can. So
Well, we've almost been primed for it with this kind of with just not really having anything rewarding up there. It's just content. It's not quality. It's just something there that
yeah.
we can fill this time with. It's like the top. Is it what? No, it's Watch Mojo in it that does all the top tens. I can imagine they'll hand over to AI at some point.
They already have a robot voice, right? Or
Oh
they just
yeah,
have text on the
definitely.
screen sometimes.
Mm. Oh yeah,
On
sometimes
the
they
odd
definitely
chance of
have some. It's definitely they have commentary over it, or they did when I used to watch them.
hmm.
I don't know why I used to watch them, but I did. And they had
They had really good SEO, so you might have misclicked. Like you might have just been like top result and clicked it, and it's
it could be, yeah, it could be. It probably was just in my algorithm or something like that, and it would just go, "Hey, up next, it's Watch Mojo's top 10,
hmm.
whatever, top 10 boats in James Bond films or some shit." I have no idea, but yeah, it's certainly a worry. I feel like with writing, it's less of a worry though than with art potentially.
Right.
The thing about writing is, I don't think you'll ever replace the human imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, you
I
can
I
have
would
it
say
there,
so.
but you can have like the AI there. But I feel
I would
like,
say you like a skilled human writer is irreplaceable. However,
mm,
we've been set up to accept mediocrity. Like it's the whole
yeah,
idea is to push mediocre as hard as you can so that people kind of they're eating shit and they're thankful it's not diarrhea. you
Yeah.
know? It's just like whenever someone reviews a movie to me, they're like, it wasn't that bad. And that's concerning. And so when the writers go on strike and they're like, we want more money, it's like, well, you're not really producing anything that isn't like either just you're just producing terrible films that are propaganda. And that's
Hmm.
like kind of everything you can expect from Hollywood. And so it's like, how do you go on strike and not make yourself very replaceable in that position? And also as someone who graduated with an English degree, I can tell you they don't I had almost no classes to teach me how to write. There's writing
Mm.
workshops, which are like you're learning from other students, but I had very little opportunity to learn how to write from other people. Like even with a degree, with a I have a major in English and a minor in writing.
Mm.
Major in English with a writing focus. I I taught myself how to write. Um, and if all the schools around the country are kind of the same, which they probably are, who's graduating with knowledge of how to write, and that I kind of no one, right? So if
Mm.
all around the country are writing jobs with people of writing degrees, and if they're not learning how to write, you set the world up kind of to accept terrible writing as the standard quality, and then if you
Mm.
could get chat to replicate it just to be about the same, and then change the red herrings are bad. Like you just get
Mm.
rid of the stuff that people hate, you know.
Yeah, it will never be none the wiser. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, I feel like because we a lot of people are sort of stepping away from Hollywood entirely.
Mhm.
And obviously, we're in the Iron Age where there's a lot of independent media kind of coming up. It's getting a lot more traction
Mhm.
among people who are very much bored of Hollywood and sort of mainstream publishing and things like that. My main quibble with Hollywood today isn't just that what they're writing is really, really bad. It's that whenever they write something that isn't really, really bad, it's hailed as amazing. And that
Yeah.
bothers me. It bothers me an awful lot. Like I don't know how if you're a Star Trek man at all.
Um, I would come home from school and it would be on, and I would
Hmm.
watch like the sort of new remake thing. I can't
Okay.
remember what it was called, but
Yeah, they had one of the recent series is Star Trek Picard,
hmm,
which you may have heard was a massive disaster for the first two seasons. Like
right.
it was an appalling, abysmal disaster of
So naturally, they went and made a season three.
well, naturally, yeah, of course. Well, season three was the last season, and the thing is, I think what happened was like the head honchos behind it um just went on to other things basically, and they just handed it off to some other guy. But
Hmm.
this other guy was someone who'd worked on the show on like the franchise before, and who actually liked the franchise. So he actually tried to make something half decent,
Hmm.
and I think he succeeded at making something half decent. But the response to it has been, "This is the best season of Star Trek ever. It's so, so good. It's amazing. All of the lasers went pew and it was fantastic." And I'm just like, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's a fine show. Like the
Right.
season is, it did its job. It was quite
Mhm.
exciting in places. There was a lot of drama, a lot of tension and things,
Yeah.
but it doesn't hold a candle to the best examples of what's come before.
Yeah. My girlfriend complains about that a lot, where there'll be something that is just barely competent, and people are like, "This is the best thing ever," or if it's not horrible.
Mm.
And it's like, I watched the first episode of Castlevania with her, and she hated it because they had really pretty animation and the choreography was really good.
Mm.
But the story was perhaps not like, and I was willing to look past the the garbage story because it was so pretty and because the fight scenes were cool. But in a way, I have to admit it probably would have been bad for me. Like it's like eating junk food.
Mm.
When you're consuming media that is kind of written by people who hate you, you're
Yes.
not necessarily going to leave that in a good place. And I think like a good part of, just like you diet by just not having junk food and you just start feeling better. I think if you diet by just not having media written by people who hate you, you'll
Mm,
be better off. Like, um, and it's unfortunate too, because I would like to see really good, like strong female characters, and not strong as in like they can literally kill you, but strong as in like well defined, like yeah, like a good character, a
hmm
good character. And like in that, it starts off by like she's like, oh, I'm just so smart, and like no one understands me, and then she's just so smart, and she's just like, oh yeah, I know about electricity, and oh, I know about medicine and stuff. And she breaks into Dracula's house, and then he falls in love with her for being smug, is how my girlfriend puts it. It was like she hated that character and was glad when she was burned to death. And so it's like, you know and the choreography was good. It's the first time since like Avatar I've seen mages do anything in combat besides end the fight with the spell that is the plot, you know?
Yeah.
Like so often magic is Deus Ex Machina, the fight ends, but
Yes.
in that show they were blocking stuff with rocks and stuff. They were the first time since Avatar I've seen people just use their magic.
hmm
And it's kind of like in like action movies or whatever, guns don't work, like
Yeah.
they don't hit people.
Yeah. People forget how to aim. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have John Wick where he shoots people and they're like, whoa, what action, how incredible. And it's like, yeah, I mean, he had the guns shoot people. Like every time a trigger is pulled, basically you see where it hits, so the guns feel like they have an effect.
hmm
um, I wouldn't say the second movie was like a masterpiece or anything, but the first one was really good because they paid attention to having guns work in a gun movie.
Yeah.
So
Fancy that.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of the
Yeah.
same thing with like swords too, where like they're not sharp. They're not sharp, and you know it. Like when you're watching a movie, they're not sharp, and you can tell because no one gets cut.
Mm.
With the exception of like Lord of the Rings and some other like really good fantasy movies. It's yeah. But then I remember watching like the trailer for Dragon Age and seeing that guy cut people with the sword, like or cut the orcs with the sword, and I was like, cool. I was like, you know what? I was wrong. Melee's cool. I'm gonna play melee class. I didn't. I played a
Mm.
mage, but
But the thought was there, and that's the
mhm,
important thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I like I miss the days as well with where you could see what was happening in a fight, where it
mhm,
wasn't kind of quick cuts and we have to shoot
yeah,
this, we have to shoot him swinging the sword, but show it from 8 different angles very quickly. So
yeah,
you can't tell as the audience that this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
yeah.
That we didn't train him at all, really.
And shaking the camera like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like I think the epitome of that was Taken 2, where they had I think 16 cuts of Liam Neeson climbing over a fence. Because it's like he's 65, he's probably not going to be climbing over this fence in a fast way. So it's just like, oh, just do loads of cuts, and it's like, and he's like spider monkeying over this fence.
At least it's not like a punch where they cut before the impact. It's
Yeah,
like kills me.
yeah,
My friend worked on a show on like Gotham, and he said he's never watched the show, but he was like scathing. He's like, whoever watches this has to be like mentally disabled to think that these are real fights.
yeah.
He's like, I don't know what the editing looks like. And I haven't seen the show either, so I don't know. But he was there, and they went like that with their shoulder, and they cut, and they'd yell cut, just this with the shoulder to show that they're swinging or something. And
Yeah,
their cameraman is like so close. It's like there's no danger at all. Like I don't know,
yeah.
just like they cut up the fight into like very very micro movements, and he was like, I don't know how you could even cut that together to make it look like they're fighting, but
Someone did.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the editor you want to hire. Definitely the one who can make that look like it's a fight. Yeah.
The best turkey slapper in the business. That's where the punch sound effect used to come from. Is people would slap a frozen turkey. They'd hang it from a chain and slap it super hard, and that was the fight. That's the old school punch sound. It's just like you hire like Gustav, the greatest turkey slapper in the West, and he's like got a warehouse full of turkeys, and he's like, give him a big briefcase of cash. The whole budget goes to him.
Yes, I came here from Soviet Union. Right, I fled communist Russia. Opened
Look how
turkey
many turkeys I
factory.
have now.
Opened turkey factory to stick it to Stalin. And now I slap turkeys for Hollywood money.
Yeah.
Well, talking of slapping things in media that hates us. You're an avid player of D&D, aren't you?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. So,
Well, when I can find a group, right? It's like,
well,
yeah.
it's one of those where it's way easier to find a group if you're DMing than if you're playing.
Yeah. So I end up DMing a lot.
Yes. Yeah, hopefully you'll find someone else who's like, I'll DM this one. You're like, ha, brilliant.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've heard of groups, mythical groups, where everyone fights over DMing.
What?
I don't know.
I don't understand that at all. I've my ideal one. I've had a sort of a campaign in mind that's episodic, where you're like on a ship or something, or on a boat, or you're traveling from place to place, and someone will DM for like a thing that you find on the road or something like that, and you have like everyone kind of DMs at some point.
Ships are really good objects because it's a communal thing that everyone can like kind of upgrade and live in and have their own like room or something. I've noticed this running it for like public games for stores. A ship is a great implement. I used a ship for a long time, and people would drop off because they get busy and then never come back. But then some people did come back. Most people didn't. Some people would come back and then they would be like, "Oh, it's the same ship. Oh, that's so cool. Is there the same like a person there or whatever?" I had like an NPC on the ship, and people really enjoyed it. It's also if someone can't go to a session, that's because they have to guard the boat, right? There you go.
Right.
If yeah, it's like because it always takes people out of it when someone can't be there for the next session or something.
Yeah.
So at some point I decided the best thing to do that kept people the most engaged was, oh, they didn't show up. So if I remember correctly, it was the boss's turn. And then it's like, look at that. It's a crit. Oh, they're downed. Oh, and this other person didn't show up. Well, they dragged them away to safety. And even though people know it's canned, where I'm just like, I'm just saying what the rolls are without rolling anything, it still kept the stakes where they were. So it ended up working. Yeah.
Nice.
So boats are a good idea. I think I've never heard of people trading off DMing going well, but I've heard of people trying it. But it sounds like a good idea, and I thought it was a good idea too. So maybe it is. I don't know. Although I think the worst thing is when someone they're DMing and they have a player character. I remember someone telling me this really funny story about this was like in college. Someone was doing this. They were DMing a group and they had a character and they gave their character the best loot. Unironically, like as an adult, they were like, "Oh, and I cast my spells through a gun. It's a magic revolver." And it's like, what?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it's you always get that. There are times where like you got someone DMing for their girlfriend or something like that, or someone is, and they're getting all the best loot, or you just have the horror stories. of how long have you been playing D&D for?
Um, I started on fourth edition.
Hmm.
No, I guess I started on 3.5, but I think fourth was already out. Um, so I don't know. I guess I don't know, maybe like 2009. So, oh God, that's an unholy amount of years now, isn't it?
It's a while, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a while ago. All right.
14 years. God.
Yeah. So do you have any horror stories from
Oh
D&D?
yeah, yeah. All my horror stories are from fourth edition, I think. I so I ran, I I just remember like I had a I guess I had like one like nightmare player. Although I don't know, yeah, I guess well I had a couple, but one that was like consistently there. And I remember I would be trying to do the story or whatever, and they would be drawing. They would just be like not paying attention. And then
Yeah.
they'd go, yeah, yeah, we accept the quest or whatever. It's like not a direct quote was, yeah, yeah, we accept the quest or whatever. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? What am I supposed to do with that? And then I was like, no, you're gonna have to tell the character or say what your character would say at least.
Yeah.
Um, and then and then yeah, I ran a we were gonna run like just like a fuck around campaign just for fun, and I was like, okay, so this is gonna be like a plane shifting campaign where you're gonna shift to different universes, and then we can
Hmm.
trade off DMing or whatever. Didn't
Mhm.
get far. No one wanted to trade off, right? But so I was like, I'm gonna get you guys to uh like I think my plan was I was going to send them to Hogwarts and have them be students at Hogwarts because I thought that'd be
Right.
very funny. Um, so so I was going to have them jump around to different places first to kind of make time shifting around like make sense. And so I sent them to Jurassic Park. It's like obviously Jurassic Park, right? There's a big T-Rex.
Yeah.
And then this one guy was like, "Well, that does he have feathers?" I was like, "What? No." I said, he's like, "Well, then it's not a real dinosaur." I was like, and this guy, he got super into social justice stuff later,
Right.
but he was really into 40K and into chaos, into the corn, and then he
Hmm.
big U-turn into like you know whatever. But he would always want to cut people's heads off and then put them on spikes, and then it's just like impossible to talk to a villager while you have heads on spikes on your like human heads
On
on
your
spikes
shoulders. Yeah,
on your
yeah, yeah.
shoulders. Yeah, yeah. So it's just like a nightmare. And so he's like, it's not a real dinosaur. I'm like, okay, well, you want to do anything? He's like, no. Like shitty, like no. And then I'm like, all right, well, the T-Rex is getting closer. It's sniffing you. And he's like, it has to be an illusion because a real T-Rex has feathers. I'm like, okay. And then I was like, all right, it bites you. And then he's like, nope, nope, nope. I cast this spell. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's not your turn. And he's like, yeah, but my character would have done this. And it's like, but he didn't. So what
He didn't because he was convinced this wasn't a real dinosaur.
And then he's like, no, you can't. Like, he wanted to see what I was looking at in the monster manual. He was like, you can't just use a dragon's stats because it's not a dragon, it's a T-Rex. I was just gonna use a dragon without the claws. I was gonna have it
Hmm.
be the tail and the bite
Yeah.
attacks. And he was like, no, it's not a dragon. And I was like, listen, I could roll 3,000 d6s if I want to. So shut the fuck up and sit down. It's like I'm the DM. Everything's supposed to be fair. It's my job to make it fair.
Yeah.
But I could just roll 3,000 d6s and fucking kill you. So shut up. It's like sit down. Um, yeah. And I think that might have been the last fourth edition game I ran. Everybody else at the table was like, "Oh, Jesus, stop, like, please."
Oh, thank God,
Everyone
fifth
else
is out.
enjoyed
Let's
the
just move on.
yeah, everyone else enjoyed it well enough, and then I don't know, it just kind of like uh, sort of it just didn't come together. There was someone else who was like very excited about going to Hogwarts, or they had an idea for something they wanted to do, and I was like, yeah, sure, anytime you want to take over, it's take the reins. I think we might have done one session. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think we ever actually got much into Hogwarts, but it was going to be funny because they were all sort of. I told them they could pick anything from any universe, and they'd all pick kind of weird stuff from all sorts of places. I think one of them was like RoboCop or something goofy. Um, but
Okay.
so then they have to be students at Hogwarts, and so they have to pretend to know how to do magic. So that they were going to have to pretend to be able to figure out how to get the spells to cast. So we had to lift the box. So
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. That'd be fun. I've not done like a multiverse sort of shifting around type campaign.
yeah,
I've been
it
very
was just
tricky.
like I mean I was in a situation where people were very insecure about role playing, and so the sessions kind of ended up being interesting boss rush mode because
Yeah.
people just couldn't. I don't know. It was I guess we were too young for a little bit of role playing.
Hmm.
It's also sometimes it was certain people in the group would not want people to role play or be like you know kind of
Hmm.
sort of toxic about it, so people were afraid to, and then it kind of had a guy
Yeah.
playing Doom on his phone and stuff. So it's like, you know,
I think Doom on his phone.
yeah,
Oh.
like an emulator on the
Oh,
phone.
okay. Yeah. Ah. That sounds a bit like my first the first sort of online game I had during COVID was where I wanted to role play. And someone else wanted to role play, but no one else really did at all. And everyone was very kind of like it was very kind of min maxy.
Hmm.
Let's just get to X point, and then yeah, it was
I
just
love combat. To be fair, I do love combat, and I love min maxing. I
yeah.
actually, I controversial opinion. I think min maxing is the best way to do it. Power gaming, no, but min
Hmm,
maxing, yes. Because if everyone is a specialist, I feel like the party is much more like cohesive, especially
hmm,
if you have people that are kind of big ego, right? They don't want someone stepping on their toes as far as like what their character's supposed to be good at. So
yeah.
if you can have a session zero where you get everyone their own space, their own sphere of influence, and you have them all min max, it really works out because then you don't have someone who's good at everything. Because sometimes, especially you get a shy character, a shy person who doesn't want to do something wrong,
Hmm,
whatever. So they don't want to roll and then roll bad, and then they feel bad if they roll and if the dice doesn't is on a one, they feel like they did something bad, and it's like
hmm,
So if you have another character that could possibly do the same thing, they'll often default to them and do nothing. So if you get everyone kind of in their own spheres, you know,
hmm. It was
it
one of the. It was another one where like one time I was playing a paladin, and I was kind of the only one with healing, and
mm,
then everyone took healing, so I was a bit like,
mm,
oh, well, there goes that, there
mm,
goes that roll. It was a bit okay. Now I'm
yeah,
just reduced to sort of standing here with my sword and shield.
having 20 AC.
Yep, just hanging out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Have you heard of the Satchel of Gerbils thing?
No.
I would say the Satchel of Gerbils is where I think that's power gaming, and that's a different thing. That's no good. That doesn't help anything. That does not help the session. So Satchel of Gerbils is 3.5 Great Cleave. Do you know how that works? It's like so Great Cleave is if you get a crit or if you kill an enemy or
Mm.
kill a creature. It says you get to make an extra. Well, regular cleave is you get to make an extra attack on another person next to you. Great Cleave is 360, like kill hit everything around you. So
Ah.
you throw down a satchel of gerbils, you kill one of the gerbils. Now you get one free attack on everything around you, which includes all the other gerbils in the satchel. So however many gerbils in the satchel, you get that many free attacks. So
Okay.
before a fight, you go by 30 gerbils, drop it next to the dragon, kill a gerbil. Now you have boom, plus all your regular attacks too. Because they didn't
Damn.
limit, like fifth edition, they have a kind of a limit where it's like one attack or something. There was no limit, and so you could just Satchel of Gerbils, do 30 attacks on the dragon and kill it. That's not good. I think
Yeah,
there's maybe if everyone else in the party refuses to do any combat. I've had that. Have you ever had pacifists? That's amazing.
I have
Uh,
played a pacifist character, but I was still engaging in combat. I just
I
wasn't.
played with
I was
someone
just
who
buffing
even
people.
argued you shouldn't fight zombies.
Okay, fair enough.
Violence for violence sake is wrong.
Yeah, I
But
mean, you have
yeah,
to strike a balance with a pacifist character.
yeah.
I was a bit like, I don't really want to hit anybody, but I'm a healer. So if you guys are hitting stuff, I'll like help you and like heal you, and like I'll move around for a flank and things
But you
like
wouldn't
that.
have healed the enemies, right?
No, no, that would
Okay.
have been silly.
Yeah, that would be silly. I couldn't imagine someone doing that. Uh,
Everyone seems. I'm going to use my diamond and cast Revivify on the revenant that we were just fighting
yeah, I mean,
because he
yeah.
deserves a second chance, guys.
Oh man, I like laid out a quest one time. There was a warehouse full of exotic animals that had broken free, and you're supposed to go in the warehouse and kill them. Very simple quest,
Mm.
just to do something right in the town because people were getting bored. There wasn't a lot of combat, and it was just so I just kind of threw a quest at them that would be kind of sort of quick. And they called the cops. They told the town guard there was a warehouse full of illegal animals. So an invisible frog escapes, giant frog escapes the fight. A bunch of town guard die when they're trying to raid the warehouse. And then they're like, see, we should have done it. We're adventurers. We're trained for this. And he's like, oh, yeah, but it wouldn't be right. We knew the crime was being committed. We had to report it. So the frog is eating a laundry woman. And he's like, we shouldn't kill the frog. And so they kill the frog, right? And then he's like, oh, but it's just downed, right? And I was like, and he's like, I'm gonna heal it. And it's like, all right. And then they're having this, they're like, in conflict with each other, and it's like people, and they don't even know each other, right? It's all people in a store, so this is like
Yeah.
this nightmare. And then he eventually they want to send the frog. The guy wants to send the frog back to its natural habitat.
Okay.
Uh, he's there. He's like, and I'm just
How
like,
big is
sure,
this
it'll
thing?
cost.
If it's eating the washerwoman.
Oh, they rescued the washerwoman. Yeah,
How big is this thing though? If it's eating a washerwoman.
I think I made it large, something like that. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like on the small side of large or whatever. It was like,
Mm.
yeah. So yeah, and then he gave all of his yeah, it's just such a stupid situation. So he paid an exorbitant amount of money to send the frog, and then he also wanted to. There was an NPC, like the boat managing NPC. He wanted to cut them in for an equal share of the profits, and it's like, and I'm like, don't do that. It's like it's an NPC. Just don't. Uh,
Oh boy. Yeah, okay. That's role playing to the nth degree, really, isn't it?
it wasn't even exactly role playing because it was like really their beliefs, right?
Oh, okay. So it's just how this person. So it's not role playing at all. Then it's just
Yeah, it was difficult because people felt very uncomfortable with it because it was their genuine beliefs, and so they were like actually arguing to the person rather than the character.
yeah.
So it was like it just didn't work very well. It was entertaining to me. By God, I really enjoyed it, but they hated it. Um, so I had to kind of work around it at
Mm,
points. But
right. Oh, okay. And I guess you're still. Are you still playing after everything
I
that's
haven't I
occurred?
haven't run anything in a while, and I'm kind of not super excited about running D&D because I don't really want to support Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other systems that I find really interesting. I don't know if you've messed around with like the Fallout system. Um,
Um,
it's
I
the company
don't think I
Modiphius.
have. Yeah, don't
They
think I
have
have.
an interesting mechanic. Their range, their like long range and short range, is really interesting. You're supposed to draw out a map because it's based on a war game. So you're
Hmm.
supposed to have a map, kind of like fourth edition, where they just say you have a map.
Yeah.
You draw a box of certain color, and that's short range, and you do another one, and that's no, it's not. So you have areas. So a sniper is 4 areas. That's long
Hmm.
range, and so you have different. So you make a map that has certain chunks of areas.
Hmm.
Like I had a store, and so behind the counter was an area. In front of the counter was an area. The outside the store in the street is an area. On the other side of the street, fourth area.
Hmm.
So people were setting up their ranges that way. Um, and they have a system where if you get a crit, whatever the system's equivalent of crit is, you put a point into a communal pool that, or no, sorry, I think it's more successes than required or something.
Hmm.
You put a point into a communal pool, and that could be used to add more damage dice,
Oh.
or reroll or something by anyone. So
Hmm.
by role playing and just rolling dice checks to do different things like inspecting, to ask questions, to persuade people, doing anything, not just shooting, you add points to the pool. And so
Ooh.
the the heaviest power gamer ever who only cares about combat is in my group, and then someone who kind of doesn't is in my group, and they want to inspect stuff and they're worried about wasting time. But the power gamer is like, no, 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 go check stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
Go do stuff, right? Because it's powering up the pool. Once the pool is full, the power gamer is like, okay, let's go, right?
Hmm.
But there's this natural sort of excitement where like the power gamer is like, yes, when they persuade the bartender to give water to a kitten, right? There's
Hmm.
just this natural pressure that you should be messing around between combat. And then, the pool's full, we should go fight something because we have all these points because you can't
Yeah, that's
store
cool.
excess, you know?
Hmm. That's really
So it's
cool.
like,
It's like Critical Banker, kind of,
oh, I don't know
in
what
the
that is.
fourth game. Oh, in the fourth Fallout, there's a perk
Oh,
called Critical
oh, yeah,
Banker.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I
Yeah.
want to check that out now. Like
And so
I've
when
played.
someone,
Oh, go on.
oh, I was gonna say, when someone scores a crit in combat, they might have a bad gun, but their class might be doing other things, and that's why they have a bad gun. So they score a crit, and then they think, do I want to add a damage dice on this? Well, it's only a d6.
Hmm.
I'll save it for you because you're going next. And then they add a d10 or something. And there's like, I
Hmm.
think it's automatic guns have more potential to add, something like
Hmm.
that.
Right.
And then if I
Hmm.
think if you roll well on the damage dice, you can get the point back or something like that. I can't quite remember how it worked, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I have. I've got the Alien RPG rulebook. I haven't played
Mm,
it yet. I'm trying to get to grips with the game itself, and it looks very like hard sci-fi. Um, even you can play it without any aliens in it, right? But it does seem very like hard sci-fi and very kind of everyone's very fragile. It's a bit
mm,
sort of Call of Cthulhu at the same time as being Alien. But I've played Pathfinder recently. Gone into Pathfinder. That's
mm,
good fun.
mm.
Blades in the Dark, good fun as well. Um, and
You
there's
ever run
just
a Cyberpunk 2020?
no, never, no. I think
That
my
one's
my compatriot Lee has played it, and he seemed to
that
enjoy it.
one's yeah. That one's it's like fine. The combat is not well thought out. I can't remember exactly how the rules work, but I just remember full auto on anything is stronger than like anything else.
Mm,
Like I was like, I was complaining about it after the session, not during or whatever, but we were just talking about it in a conversation. I was like, that is the most ridiculous you could possibly make damage,
mm,
because I was running through all the different rules for different ways you could get killed. And I was like, if you got hit by a car moving 300 miles an hour, it would not do more damage than a full auto pistol with the lowest damage type. It was like,
cool.
I was just arguing like a full auto Mac 10, one burst is going to do more than getting hit by a car moving that fast, falling off the highest height of any building. Like terminal velocity won't do that much. Missiles.
Jesus.
Missiles are much weaker than full auto.
What?
Grenades, nothing can do more than I can't remember how the mechanics work now, but I was like running through the numbers to people. I was like, this is not acceptable damage. You can also die from being shot in the arm, rules as written. Like it can full auto in the arm will murder you, even if your arm hit points run out. It doesn't say
Mm.
that you stop taking damage, and so rules as written, we were like, yeah, no, you're dead. So someone
Ah,
died from being full autoed in the hand or something. There's location damage. It's like,
Jesus. Oh,
yeah,
that's so weird. Like, oh, oh.
nothing better than an assault rifle either. Like a yeah, there's
Mm.
like there's no reason to do anything but assault rifle as far as like if you're being like meta. And I had the DM that ran it. He or GM I guess. He was very like has to be the rules as written. And so someone was playing a techie and there's nothing he can do because the techie's ability is you can make anything work for this
Mm.
amount of time. So you
Right.
can jury rig things, but he didn't like that. He was like, well, that doesn't make sense, or this doesn't make sense. You know, I remember, like there's a one of the dice checks is fast talking, and someone rolled max result, and they had the max stats for fast talking, and he was like, it fails because it doesn't make sense that you'd be able to fast talk out of that. It's like we shouldn't have allowed them to roll. You should have told them it
Yeah,
was impossible.
that's 101, isn't it? Don't
And
make
like
him roll for something
yeah,
pointless or
there's all these class abilities that don't do anything as if you have a DM that doesn't want you to do stuff that isn't exactly. There's the solo, which is you roll initiative every round. The solo gets a bonus to initiative. But then there's other classes that were like the rocker boy can call a concert of X size, and the media can like I don't know like make people think a certain way. Um, I think the corpo can like get free stuff like a tank or something. So that's something.
Mm.
But there is a lot of and it has a specific cash value. So you have some real rules for it, but there's a lot of classes that have sort of nebulous things they can do, and they're just not valuable if you have a DM that doesn't want you to like the kind of DM that doesn't like illusion spells is the kind of DM that you can't have for like Cyberpunk 2020.
Mm. It's so fun, like the all of the open D&D kind of kerfuffle that happened at the start of the year.
Hmm.
It's sort of it's like revealed this world
Mhm.
that D&D was in the way of, like, hey, don't look at that, don't look at this, don't look at Paizo, who are Paizo, and then you go away, and then you see all of these systems
Yeah.
just there waiting to be played, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
huh,
Yeah. I think part of it is it's just hard to get a group together. So
yes. I mean, it depends what you use, really. On
yeah.
Roll20, it's very difficult to get a game together.
You know it's a it's a great mechanic if you want to have a high lethality in your world.
Yeah.
Um My Farag, which is like Varg's RPG, his thing is you have like if you do a good deed, you get a point that goes into a pool that is as big as your level. You can use that point to I think it's is it reroll or get a free success. Um, or if you die, you restart to level 1, right?
Mm.
But you get a number of feat picks equal to the number of good boy points that you have of
Ooh.
good deeds. So if you're level 3 and you die, but you were a good character, it's like part of some sort of philosophy that the good lives on, and in people some like Viking philosophy or whatever.
Mm.
So if you have 3 good boy points, you start at level 1, but now you get 3 free feats, and so you can start power gaming to make yourself a much stronger character when you get back to level 3. And so
Mm.
death is like still something that happens, but you have this thing.
Mm. Right. And obviously you have to survive up to level 3.
Yeah, I suppose so. Or you could just get to level 1, do something good, and die, and then start over. And
Well, yeah, and then you've got one again. Oh,
yeah,
that'd be a really good system to have in Pathfinder, definitely, because that game is lethal. I think I've done like 4 sessions of that and died already.
yeah. It also gives a sort of moral motivation to the party if you need that,
Mm.
and sometimes you do.
Yeah, on occasion, yeah. If you have a
I
murder
think
hobo.
I think session zeros are super important. If you can get everyone to sort of agree on like kind of what the party wants to be doing,
Mm.
I think that'll really kind of set the compass. Because if you get people to kind of sort of just get on the same page, it's because sometimes you start a session one and you just know this is the last session because you just know that everyone picked characters that are totally at odds with each other.
Yeah.
Like you have someone pick like a good character and someone else pick an evil character, and it's like, well, now what are we gonna do? Because
Hmm.
you know I mean I played I played a campaign for a couple sessions, and like session one the guy was like, I'm a paladin of communism, and I was like, can I be a ninja where my like throwing stars are swastikas? Like it's just why do this? Why are you doing this to me?
That
It's
is,
like,
there is definitely there is one that was it the Oath of the People? That's the communist one. I know
oh,
someone who
they
is
do they
playing.
add that? I don't even know.
I think they added it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not even shocking, I guess.
No,
But
I mean, no, it's not shocking at all, but it is something they did. But, but the stuff they're adding to D&D is so strange. It is so
mm,
we were going through like some of the D&D races before the stream started.
mm,
And I say stream, we're not streaming before I started recording.
yeah.
But and it's just like there's a bunch that they added that I didn't even know were there. Like the
Oh
rabbit
yeah, you didn't know about
person
the
and
Yuan Ti.
I well yeah, I was assuming it was like a proper snake thing. I think it
Mm.
used to be a snake and then they
It's
kind
it's
of
a
made it.
monster, yeah. There used to be a big boss that had cobra head with a big comb and then arms made out of lots of snakes, and it's very cool looking.
Mm,
And honestly, I wouldn't mind playing a character that had that snake arm thing as like an
mm,
attack. It sounds very cool. But
yeah. But like the hippo people I had no idea about and like the blob
mm,
person where you can be a blob
yeah,
and just they just added it. I think all of them got added with like the space thing that they did.
yeah. The space thing sounds cool. I'd like to run a sort of fantasy sci-fi in space. That
Mm.
does sound like a cool adventure. But yeah, but obviously, like modern D&D is just a certain way, and it's like, you know,
Yeah, you kind
but
of got to. You've almost got to endure all of the
yeah,
all of the stuff. Like I knew
but
we were in trouble when kobolds stopped being pathetic. That's when I knew we were in trouble. And
oh yeah,
then and now it's absolute nonsense.
the only races that can be bad are human.
It's well, yeah.
Very, very like anti-human thinking. But um, speaking of all this stuff, I don't know if I mentioned, but right now I'm doing a Kickstarter with my girlfriend. We wrote a comic together, and
Right. I was going to get onto the
yeah,
comic. Yeah.
oh yeah, yeah. So I kind of came into it with a lot of these sort of I guess the idea of like if you don't like the media that's out there, make your own. Because I remember I read like a D&D comic, way back. I was still oblivious to Wizards of the Coast sort of compass, as it were, and I remember being like, well, this is bad, right? I was like flipping through it, right, and I was like, why is it so bad? Like why is like why is everything so bad? And I was asking the guy who owned the shop, and he was like, oh well, I guess they didn't want to do super generic like knight slays a dragon. I was like, wait, that exists? Can I have that? Where's that comic? I genuinely thought he was being serious that was a thing, but it's yeah. And so I guess I sort of went into making the comic kind of thinking like, how do I make this, sort of good? And balancing races was something I thought about. Um, so I have mostly humans, but I have a pixie and I have an elf.
Mm,
And for the pixie, I thought it would be an interesting idea. Oh yeah, so the pixie
mhm.
animates a suit of armor, and I was thinking, well, that would just waste a lot of magic, right? But then
Right.
I thought, well, pixies are magical, so they should have lots of magic. But then I was thinking, well, maybe it shouldn't have lots of magic all at once. Like you can't store the magic, so it has high magic recovery, and it just takes a taxes its recovery that it can't even hold, and just puts it into moving the suit of armor around.
Mm. I see
And
you
then,
bossed your goal there. Hold on.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's very exciting. And then the
Hmm.
elf, the one thing that I wanted to play with was the fact that they're super light.
Hmm.
Um, or the idea from like maybe like Lord of the Rings or whatever, where he can walk on snow. I thought that that was kind of a cute thing to play around with. So I wanted to do that and then kind of lean into it and kind of explore how that would work mechanically. And I think, like I think I mentioned before the stream, it's interesting how humans have all this incredible endurance compared to other animals, but they're not. That's not really expanded on in any fantasy systems that I've seen. And so I
Mm.
thought, why don't I make the elf by comparison not have as much endurance, but because she's so light over rough terrain, it's roughly equal to how humans would be. Like we have to step over all these roots and stuff, and they can kind of walk on the leaves or something. You know,
Mm.
they have this sort of easier time getting around because they're not walking uphill is the same as sort of walking on flat ground because they're so magically light they don't have to lift themselves, they're just kind of moving.
Mm.
And yeah, and then I made her bow very fast but low draw weight. Like it's not like a long bow like it is in D&D where it's like, you know, to me a longbow, like seeing people shoot longbows, like that's a powerful bow, you know.
Hmm.
But I couldn't really imagine an elf, you know, supposed to be very dexterous and quick and stuff, you know, just going like, you
Yeah.
know, pulling back 200 pounds.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah. The draw weight would have to be very, very small in
mhm,
order to get like the quick, like get the Legolas, like,
yeah. But at the same time, you have all these speed archers that can shoot lots and lots of arrows very quickly. So if you say that they're even quicker than people, then
yeah.
maybe they could launch lots and lots of arrows.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Machine gun elf.
Mm. And to make it simple, she has a magic quiver because I figured elves have maybe more access to enchanted stuff, so it'd be a little easier for a lower economic status, like beginner adventure, to have a magic item. And it's also
Hmm.
nice because you don't have to balance it. There's not players involved, so no one's going to be upset that someone has this and someone else has that. So,
Mm.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah. Where do they get the quiver? You know.
But at the same time, you know, if you're a reader, you're going to identify with a character, and so if it feels like a character is being treated unfairly or they're not getting their chance to shine, you know, you're going to get similarly annoyed to a player that's not getting that same opportunity. So it's kind of, sort of I use my experience as DMing to kind of understand how to balance the different screen times of the characters and stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. I was gonna say, like, I think we were talking in messages that D&D kind of impacts what you
Mhm.
write and how you write.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least for the comic, it has.
Mm. It always is always a good thing for me. It lets me kind of test out characters.
Oh yeah,
So let's see how this character would actually behave and how successful they might be in behaving that way and how
I've broken it
competent
down
they
even
are and things.
further to like the key certain elements, certain lines, certain like little bits. You know, you
Mm.
can just spread them out into all different things and then take notes on like how people are reacting to it.
Mm. Right. Well, how yeah, how others react to them as well as
Hmm.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have well, it's I won't say it's on the go at the moment because I've been kind of focusing on the finale of my fantasy series, but I've there's been in the background like a novel centered around kobolds and how kind of but these are like these are real kobolds. These are real pathetic kobolds.
Right.
Not none of this I can breathe fire for 15 feet nonsense. I'm talking
Yeah,
like
I always thought the halflings in D&D they took the magic out of it because like, you know, hobbits had a rough time like going like you know, reading the Hobbit. Bilbo
mm,
doesn't really do as well as everybody, but he's like getting through it.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, then people make these halflings that are super gods. It's like, you know,
Yeah. Well, they like the kobold. I remember kobolds having minuses to like strength. And one of their
mm,
things was one of their inherent racial abilities in D&D is plead, cower, and beg because they're so pathetic. They go, "I'm in danger. I'm just going to weep and cry and hope that you don't kill me." and that gives everyone advantage on it on the whatever they're fighting, because this thing is focused solely on this kobold and probably laughing at this pathetic kobold, and everyone else just goes ah and like sticks it with spears. And I don't know, there's just something lost. This is the thing with like the power creep. It just takes all the magic away and takes all the variety away from it. It's like in Super, like if not Super, The Incredibles. Like if everyone's super, no one is.
I guess that's in the sequel or something.
I don't know. I actually haven't seen The Incredibles, but I know that's a line from it. If
No.
everyone's special, no one is special.
Hmm.
Or super, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever the line is, if everyone's whatever it is, no one is
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah. And I guess it also like I think min-maxing in a way like makes people make themselves have flaws.
Yes.
Sort of like yeah, causing people to specialize. And it's like, some people they'll be upset if their character can't do something, but it's what they are not realizing is that if they could do everything, then other people in the party couldn't do it, you know? It's like, well, how come I can't lift the box? I should be able to be strong. And it's like, I guess,
You can try, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I think I think saying you can try is always I rolled a 2. Well, you don't lift, you put your back out. You don't lift the box and you put your back
right.
out.
You know what I missed from fourth edition though? Minions.
Okay.
I use that in fifth edition all the time. One hit point enemy that dies for many damage. And I even make them weaker than they were in fourth edition. Sometimes. Some minions, I'll say they have no AC. You can just kill them. Right?
Okay.
Because it serves me no purpose if a character attacks and misses when it's a swarm of creatures, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of no, like if a fighter is fighting a bunch of kobolds, let's say, one attack is one kill, and then if they miss, it's already frustrating being surrounded and only having 2 attacks. So to really dig yourself out of that situation, you need an AoE, and a mage has those AoEs, and so they use them there, and then they get to feel like the big hero.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have like a higher health creature or something like that, you balance them together. You have a bunch of minions and then the big boss. By wiping out a swarm of minions, one character gets to feel like the hero, and then by doing a bunch of damage to the boss, the warlock gets to be like, yeah, I have so much DPS or something. That's sort of,
yeah, it's the balance. Yeah, because there's the in combat and the out of combat.
That too,
where you need to have that.
Yeah, I looked at that a lot in working on Horizon Quest. I wanted to make sure that there was in combat, everyone had their own place, and that's the easiest for me to sort of define. And then I wanted their utility out of combat to also sort of not step on each other's toes. And then I wanted their areas of expertise to do the same thing, where they sort of overlap, but they still have their own unique area. And then I wanted even their personalities to have this like sort of combined benefit. Like for leadership of the party, the elf is in charge, but she's not a great tactician, and she doesn't have like the spirit of a leader. She doesn't have that great thumos of like telling people what to do, but the knight does. But the knight doesn't have the organizational skills or the expertise. And then there's like a tactical character, the druid, the link character for the reader. He has a lot of expertise, but he doesn't have like the motivation to be the elf's role of being like the party manager or like the figurehead who's like making calls when bravery is required, etc.
Yeah, I find in sort of party based stories, it's always good to have them complement each other in that way. Like you have someone who's the scout who will spot something before anyone else will, and you
Yeah.
have this that kind of barbarian character maybe that will fight on when it seems hopeless and kind of gives everyone else a boost around them because they're willing to carry on and fight with
Yeah.
everything they have. And then you've got the person in the middle who's the rock, who's like keeping them all grounded, maybe, and
Yeah.
someone who thinks outside the box, who's a bit more like, okay, we could do this, we could, yeah.
No, I'm excited for the challenge of writing a novel with a party because Slayer in the Wide Valley, I wrote it with a single adventurer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm excited for the challenge of writing a party and having them all balance each other.
Mm.
But yeah, I was also for the longest time I wanted to write, like a story sort of similar to Slayer in the Wide Valley. Character with like a little bit of magic and like sort of managing their resources and stuff and sort of yeah. So
Mm. Yes, I'm sort of the opposite in a sense. Well, I'm in a fantasy setting, and like I've written plenty with a party like that. The Four Guardians series
mm,
is party based,
okay.
and the sci-fi stuff I've written, some of it is kind of based on a crew, so it's sort of party based in a way. It's
Mm,
just a larger party, and then you have like a couple of them where it's either one person. I mean, not necessarily one person. Well, I guess one of them, like the Eye of the Universe, which is more of a kind of survival story. That's got one person and a dead guy, so that's kind of
mm,
well, to say that's one person and a half. It's it's having it's writing something where someone is just on their own
right.
that I kind of want to have a look at and see if I
Mm,
can make that work because it's tricky. Yeah. I find I'm at my most comfortable when I'm writing people bouncing ideas off each other
yeah.
or like
Yeah,
quipping.
I can see that.
Yeah. And it's something to just take me a little outside my comfort zone. I mean, even the kobold thing is very much we're a party of kobolds who have been kicked out of our burrow because we're all they're using it as an excuse to like get rid of us all because we're not really very good at what we do. So they're still a party, they're just not a very competent party.
Yeah, my favorite thing with kobolds is that they worship dragons, so you can always have dragons involved if you have a kobold cave.
Yep. Yeah, I love that they have this inflated ego from having sort of dragon blood. Yeah, you know we're kin with that giant winged monster. That's our
Yeah,
family. So yeah, we're just as powerful as that is. And you're just staring at this thing that's a foot and a half tall, looking up at you and squeaking like a
yeah,
chihuahua.
yeah. It makes for a nice. I had one dungeon I designed and used a bunch of times for different like stores and things. It was like a church that had been hit with a mudslide, and
Mm.
then it was like abandoned, and then kobolds moved in, and they're ready to clean it up now. But now there's kobolds, so they want you just to get rid of the kobolds so they can go back into the church.
Hmm.
And so I had a bunch of kobolds with like really terrible traps that do one damage, but like no matter how much damage the trap does, people are pissed. It's just the fact that it was a trap. It's just like um, and then the way you explain it is always like really it like adds to it. It's like, well, you see a trap in front of you, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll try to disarm it, and then they roll bad. They roll like a 2, and then you're like, the trap was actually so poorly designed. It fell on top of you, and one of the nails that the string was wrapped into the wall. It actually caught you right in the eye. 1 damage. and they're just so mad.
One damage.
I had a kobold sentry on the roof, and he threw a pot, and it missed. But they're so mad anyway.
So that's the thing. You can just have so much fun
Yeah,
with those like minion characters.
yeah. And then at the end, there's a dragon, right? There's a baby dragon they've been taken care of, and so then a baby dragon is it's like a fine challenge for like low level party.
Mm,
But there's still the breath, right? So
right. Mm.
yeah.
Yes, these things that just get lost in all the we must not make anything weak. It's just
Weak stuff is great. Having
weak stuff
having
is
weak
fun.
enemies is great. It's
Yeah,
yeah.
it's fun. It's just missing out on fun.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things where I always kind of uh whenever people who don't know about fantasy would criticize what a mage is wearing, I'm
Mm,
always like, they're not wearing enough armor, not wearing enough clothes, they're too naked. And I'm always just like, you have such terrible defense. It wouldn't make sense. Like,
mm.
it's like when I'm playing a mage in a game and I get hit, I'm like, yeah, okay. Oh, that's all my health. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like, it feels sort of fair, and it makes the warrior more special that he can take the hit.
Yeah.
And just like making everything very samey, it just doesn't quite it doesn't make everyone special in a group.
Mm,
And I think that sort of, yeah, it takes the uniqueness out when you make everyone sort of good at everything.
mm.
And kobolds aren't weak as an enemy because I have more minis I can put on the board.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like one kobold is weak, but if I put 20 out there, um, it's like it can become monotonous, I suppose. So you have to know that your party has a way out of it. But
Hmm.
yeah, minions definitely have a nice effect to them.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good early game. It's a good early game quest as well. Going into this thing, and there's lots of small things to.
It's also even late game, you just make more, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
like you go up to it's like, oh, you go over the ridge, you're scouting out the enemy camp. There's just about 300. Like what? 300? It's like, because if you pack them tight enough, and you would because you're the DM and you are in charge of their tactical intelligence and it's not high, a fireball can wipe out a lot because it's a 30, was it 30 by 30? So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
I forget how many that is, but it's almost like a sixth or a fourth or something of even a massive group.
Hmm.
Um, and when you tell someone how much damage they deal, they're a certain kind of excited, but there's always going to be someone who does the most damage, like the highest number.
Mm.
But you could also be a character that kills this many, you know, creatures. It's like, oh, you killed 30, and that's like, wow, that's another number. It's sort of this parallel levels of greatness.
Mm.
Um, and then even sometimes if I see someone who's playing a warrior is kind of not engaged, they feel like they're not doing that much because everyone's doing all this damage. I'll roll the damage for the attack first.
Yeah.
I'll show it to them. I'll be like, so it'll be 76 damage if it hits. And they're like, what did you roll to hit? And I was like, I didn't roll yet. And then I lean out and I drop the dice in the middle of the table so everyone can see. And then it's a 15, right?
Hmm.
Total 15, and they have 18 AC or 20 AC or something. It's like, or even better if it's high. If it's 18 AC, if it's I roll an 18 and they have 20 AC because they're holding the shield,
Hmm.
or that's the best way to remind someone that they picked the defensive feat. It's like you roll an 18 and it's like, oh god, that hits. I have 18 AC. It's like, well, you actually have that feat, so it's one higher. And they're like, oh.
Hmm.
And then everyone's like, oh, they start to feel like they're doing more and stuff. It's nice. But yeah.
Mm. Well, and then and then writing it all that in, writing all that into a story
Mhm.
when you don't have
Yeah.
those people around. Yeah, factoring it all in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
It's really nice. Fantasy is awesome. It's just I love
Yeah.
fantasy so much.
Yes, it's yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's this great vehicle for a lot of different kinds of stories to tell. Yeah.
I that whole specialization thing, it's actually older than I thought. I was looking into like German fairy tales. I was reading a lot of them. I think no, I had a class for it, right?
Mm,
Shocking that I had a class that wasn't horrible, but a
right.
lot of people sort of characterize German fairy tales as the little match girl, where they're very, very sad and people horribly named, etc. But
Yeah.
really, I would characterize German fairy tales as being stories about specialization. There's a whole lot of stories that are just like clever Hans, fast Hans, strong Hans.
Mm,
There was one version of like strong Hans that I read, and it's like Hans was very strong, and he lifted things every day, and that's why he was so strong. And then Hans has like a problem, and it's like and then he solves it by being strong, and he has another
hmm
problem, and then it's like, and then the Grim Reaper shows up and says, "Oh, well, you cannot. No one can be stronger than death." And then he says, "Yes, I can," and he punches death in the face. And because he's so strong, uh, like death left or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of those where it's just like, if you focus really hard at being good at one thing, you can have success even if you don't have all these other things. And
Hmm.
I think that like sort of it's interesting to see that sort of root of specialization being a thing.
Mm. So okay. So this was at university, I guess. You had this
Mhm.
course.
Yeah.
So you were at university doing, is English part of the humanities?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at university doing a humanities degree,
Mhm.
and this was when?
Um, it's a couple years ago.
Right.
I guess I graduated 2018, and then
Mm.
went to Disney to celebrate afterwards. That was
Oh,
the
okay.
same. Yeah, although it was kind of rough because I had gained a lot of weight
Hey.
from finals being so stressful.
Mm.
Um, I didn't change anything I ate either. I just pack on the pounds with stress, just
Mm.
like the whole survival instinct or whatever. I wasn't like binge eating or anything. It's just stress puts on weight. Uh, yeah,
Right.
and then
So
like,
you would have been at university then, right in the thick of it, in the
oh yeah,
humanities at university,
oh yeah, yeah.
doing doing yeah.
I should say that class uh, was one of the only ones where I learned something that
Right.
wasn't about racism, sexism, homophobia.
Mm.
And yeah, it was a. I would not recommend going to a liberal arts college to anyone. It was quite rough. And I yeah, it was very bad, especially being white wasn't like the most popular race I could have picked if you're rolling your character out for university, probably not a super
Right.
meta option.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, it was bad. I mean, you yeah, I mean, something for a while I was kind of like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to like, once I was done, I was like, ugh. I didn't want to be someone who was like constantly like associated with my stories about school because there's just so many and they're so crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but then being out for a bit, I kind of was reflecting that there was some funny stuff that happened, and I think stuff is getting better
Mm.
generally in the world, and I'd like to make sure I remind people what it was like so it doesn't go back there.
Right.
So I kind of looked at it sort of in a more like positive light, and I was reflecting on some like happy stories that I witnessed while I was there. But
Mm.
yeah, there's like a whole like there's just a whole gaggle of hot takes that you run into at university that are just kind of crazy. Like I had a professor that was like, "Don't even get me started on the infantilism of being attracted to breasts." I was like, I
Don't even get me started on those breasts.
And
Oh,
I had a class on, God help me, it was on video games and
oh
like
dear.
stuff like that. And it was just about how they were terrible. We spent some we yeah. I mean, I think part of what made me not realize how stressful the situation was because I enjoyed being right too much, and I think that was like it was a bad it was like a it's almost like a drug. Like it's just like it's so satisfying being so right that
Mhm.
I didn't realize how much stress I was actually under because it's just like people would come out with these like crazy arguments. Um, like I just remember this one like a couple days ago. I like buried it because there's something that someone said freshman year, um,
Mhm.
and people would stop saying stuff around me because they knew that I would, I would say something and they didn't want to be wrong.
Right.
But someone's hot take was, and this is like big quotes. Not I like of all the of all the of all the things I don't want someone to misattribute to me saying. This was someone was saying that uh, there should be nothing wrong with an adult having a romantic relationship with a child
Oh.
because as long as there's nothing sexual that would happen, and the only reason people think something sexual would happen is because the only people who would think that is men because all men are rapists. That was hot take of the.
Hang on.
To be fair, it came from a student, not a teacher, but that's kind of
All right. So that went in that was like a roller coaster. That went in a bunch of different directions. As soon as you
hmm,
said the word adult, I was like, I think I know where this is going. And somehow it still
yeah.
surprised me.
Yeah. There was a bunch of funny ones. Ah, there was kind of a heart there was kind of a heartbreaking case of like a girl cheated on her boyfriend with a guy and then the and didn't take her trash out, and so there was like a condom in the garbage, and then the boyfriend was like, what is this? And she was like, oh, it wasn't my fault, I was raped. And then they
uh,
so
rough.
then it went through this whole process, and the guy who was accused was like treated very poorly and had some like health issues and stuff. And then one of her friends recorded her in secret and asked her about it, and she was very regretful about lying. And
Mm,
then that recording is the only reason that he was proven innocent, because there's like a kangaroo court type of deal. It's called Title IX in
yep.
schools, where you can be banned from other colleges based on their gut feeling rather than any sort of court evidence. So they decide,
Mm,
and I knew someone who was in trouble for stalking, and I
mm.
asked them about it, and they were like, "Oh, well, you can actually just get rid of." So stalking is following someone and making them uncomfortable. What we do is we just get rid of the and change it to an or. And I was like, "What? So just making someone uncomfortable is stalking them? That's not stalking." And she's like, "Well, it can be." And I was like, "No, it can't. That's not
It's
true."
the both of them are required. The
Yeah,
following
and
is required for the.
there was someone in one of my classes who was upset that rape victims can't remember stuff that happened, so they shouldn't be required to give testimony. And like and so they were like, there shouldn't have to be physical evidence, and they shouldn't have to have testimony to convict someone of rape. That was like a real argument, and the professor was
Mm.
like, "Oh, okay, that's a really good point." I was like, "What? That is
What?
it?"
No, it's not. It's not a good point at all. So,
Like,
okay, if they don't want to give testimony, okay,
mm,
but the physical evidence, yeah, you need that.
yeah, but there has to be some sort of indication that it happened. Like, you
Yeah,
can't just you yeah, you can't just say put them in jail. Like, there has to be
right.
some sort of court trial. So, at some point, um, yeah, I mean, so there's all this like stress, and I didn't. I think the moment I realized how much stress it was there's someone who was like super upset about whatever. They were very depressed, and I
Mm.
was like, oh, man, I get depressed sometimes. And then this girl who was nearby was like, oh, that's so great. Oh, and gave me all this like positive feedback.
Mm.
And I felt this big lift of stress. Like everyone didn't hate me for a second. And then I
Yeah.
suddenly understood why everyone was so proud of having depression, and everyone was so they would add all these extra identities to kind of give them the extra points. Like everyone was bisexual, but they preferred one gender, right? And then once pansexual was a thing, everyone's pansexual, but they prefer one gender. And then if you don't want to sleep around and you don't want people to, call you a bigot for not wanting to sleep around, you have to say that you're demisexual, meaning you can't be attracted to anyone outside of a relationship. And then, and if you want to
Right.
sleep around, then you're poly or whatever. There was, people had all these points, and then you get rewarded so much. And I felt that big relief of stress, and I felt sick afterwards because I was like,
Yeah.
now I get it. Now I see all the pressure that people are under, that I was under, and I didn't notice.
Mm.
And my friend was telling me a story about North Korea or whatever, where
Hmm.
there was prisoners of war that were treated well, but they were offered extra prizes like a baseball if they would write a essay about how much they like communism. And they
Hmm.
would be like, ha ha ha, we'll just like cheat. We'll like just not believe this, but write it. And then the whole camp would applaud and say good job. And all the guards would say good job and stuff. And then a lot of the people would end up being communists in the States when they were
Mm.
released. And a lot of them killed themselves and stuff. And it was because just that feeling of having your mental plasticity played with like that was too much for them.
Mm.
And so I can understand how that would happen, kind of experiencing it. So anyway, school's a
Yeah.
total nightmare.
Well,
But
university's like the perfect petri dish for that kind of
mhm,
thing because it's so
yeah,
much money for one. You're under a
yeah,
lot of pressure to do well because it's
mhm,
not necessarily your money. Well,
right,
you probably got a loan, which means
mhm,
it's not your money, and you don't want to blow that
right,
not your money, not getting this degree. You've got your deadlines.
mhm,
University culture is not necessarily the best culture for knuckling down and working, at least not
mhm,
in the UK. Like it's very much go out. You're finally independent, so go out and get wrecked.
mhm.
And so it all happens in like the final, all that pressure kind of builds and kind of hits you in like April when your
Yeah.
finals are due.
I don't know. No, I think everyone was stressed the whole time. Like I think that it was people were suffering all sorts of interesting stress conditions
Mm,
all throughout my years. Freshman
yeah.
year, so many people failed out or left or whatever, and it's like in a way that's kind of a better decision, but you're still out
Mm,
like tens of thousands of dollars. So it's like probably shouldn't have gone in the first place. It's
mm.
you
Well,
know
it's also having a lot of people of that age around
yeah.
each other all the time. When I mean, and having sort of social politics and social dynamics sort of interplaying
Yeah.
together, and it's just a whole mess
To
of
be
stuff.
fair, there's plenty of normal people, but
Mm,
not enough, I would say, especially when the teachers are sort of. There was a teacher who hung around the freshman dorms and would try to convert people to communism. Like and it's like
mm,
exactly how like a pedophile would groom someone. He was like, "Oh, you're so smart for your age," is
damn.
like something that he said. He would
Uh,
always open, "You're so smart for your age. Like, why don't we have a conversation?" It's like, "Oh, so what do you think about?" It's like, "Aren't you upset that people have more than you?" And you don't have to be. One of my friends was religious, and he was like, "Yeah, he was trying to convince me not to be Christian." He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian." He's like, "You don't have to be. I mean, you're away from your parents. You're such a smart kid. You know."
oh, I don't like it. It's so insidious.
It's so weird.
Oh,
Yeah, he'd take his office hours. He'd take them in the freshman dorms and talk to freshmen and like invite them to sit with him and talk to him about communism.
I
Yeah.
mean, just
I wish he'd told me
oh,
sooner because I had that professor and he had us reacting to stuff and with journal entries, and he had us read this like communist stuff, and I didn't know it was communist, right? But I was like reading it, I was like, man, all these points are terrible. It's like some communist gobbledygook is what I wrote in my journal, and I was like, it's a terrible argument. Like you'd have to, in order for this to be true, you'd have to accept all of like communism as fact. I wrote that in my journal, and then he's holding up some like grammar book, and he's like, "Oh, it's like Mao with his little red book," and I laughed, and he looked at me dead in the eyes, like, like real big eyes, and I was like, oh no. Oh, I wrote that in my journal. Oh no. That's gonna be a bad grade. Oh
Oh
no.
no.
And then he goes on and he's like, so the stuff you reacted to was it's written by a communist, actually. And some people are surprised and stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you guys think about that? And I was like, oh
We know that Mr. Misner is not surprised that it was written by a communist.
no. And then of course that journal entry was a big old D minus.
Yeah, you didn't say the things I wanted you to say.
Mhm.
It's a D
Mhm.
minus.
I
Is that
remember
like a pass, but just
yeah.
just
Well,
barely a
he
pass?
he wouldn't have been allowed to fail me because I would have sued the school. If
Right.
they wouldn't give me my degree, I would just sue the school. So they have to. I
Mhm.
graduated with people that had like real mental disabilities and stuff. Like it was like not, I don't know. People like my parents were like, oh, you should be proud of your degree, and it's like, man, I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
yeah.
I remember I handed in an essay that I like actually worked hard on because I was trying to like improve my essay writing. Um, and I got a D minus, the classic, right? Because I can't fail you, right?
Hmm.
And then someone that was sitting next to me got an A minus, and he was high, he was drunk, he wrote it the night before on loose leaf paper by hand. A minus.
Okay.
And I started reading it. The first sentence was not a sentence. The second sentence was not a sentence. He was really inebriated while he was writing it, but he kept on repeating the thing that the professor believed. And so he got a good
Mm.
grade. And I got a bad grade.
Oh God. Okay.
And the
I feel like he found a way to game the system.
the professor even said, if you're going to write something that I disagree with, it better be good. He like admitted he had a bias in grading. It wasn't like a secret.
Yeah.
So, you know, but, you know, alternatively, you were saying kids getting away from their parents and having freedom.
Mm.
Some people go and drink and then get themselves a beer gut. That was amusing to see. Like when people would I my freshman year I I lost like a lot of weight.
Mm.
The summer before I lost some weight, and then freshman year I was just working out a ton. Despite all the stress, I was working out a ton. I was anxious about waiting for a class. I didn't
Mm.
want to just be sitting someplace that I felt like I didn't belong. So I
Yeah.
would go to the gym if there was 30 minutes, and I would just do some random exercises, and then I would do a real workout like every other day or something. So I lost like 30 pounds or something. Um, Only to then gain 50 my last year, go up to like I was at 240 something,
Mm.
uh, and I carried all on my face. It's like big, and so I have all these pictures, these beautiful pictures of my girlfriend in Disney, and I'm like, um,
Like a mushroom. Like
yeah,
point.
yeah, just everything in my head,
Yeah.
and yeah, but some people when they get away from their parents, they don't necessarily drink. My friend went to an engineering school, and he said they get it. Those kids, some of the kids when they got away from their parents, they didn't drink alcohol. They're all nerds, and so they wanted to become Dragon Ball Z characters, and so they all got into steroids.
Oh no.
So he would go to the gym, and he would see all these like really jacked nerds that like were just like huge. And he said some of them, like he was re-racking his weights and his earbud fell out because when he putting it down, he just caught it. And he heard the strangest sound and he took out the other earbud and he's listening. And the guy who's re-racking his weights next to him had just walked away. He's not listening to music. He's listening to a compilation of screams from Dragon Ball Z.
I was gonna say, as you go,
Yeah, it
ah.
was just he was like, I could fucking swear to you, I heard Vegeta screaming, and I was like, why would I hear that in the gym? And so,
Oh.
and so he like went to go work out next to the guy without turning his music back on. And he's like, that's Dragon Ball Z, that's Piccolo screaming. And he was like I swear to God, I heard special beam cannon. There's like there was this one guy who had like there's a stringer with like Vegeta on it
Mhm.
that and he was just like it was like his pecs were busting out of the shirt and stuff. It's just like got into like super heavy steroids, just worked out every day to become Broly.
It's just oh
My
that's
friend was
like
just like him though. He was he said his goal was that he couldn't put his arms down. He wanted to not be able to put his arms
he
down.
wanted to be around like this the entire time.
He wanted to
Oh
get
my
such big
god.
biceps they wouldn't go down. He's like, my dream physique is actually Broly. I'd like to just be Broly. So
Oh gosh.
some people do something mildly more productive than social justice and alcohol. So
Right. Some, yeah, some do. Yeah. Well, it's
yeah.
the thing, like at 18, when most people are going, at least in the UK, they're about 18.
Mhm.
It's like you're so vulnerable at 18
Oh yeah.
to all sorts of things. You're basically still a kid, even though you don't feel like you are, but you basically are.
Yeah.
So having that, it's just such a ripe environment for predation of some manner,
Mhm.
be that from a professor or be that from kind of whoever, or be it from just idea creep. It's
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah. I
mean,
mean, oh, go ahead.
all the stories that you've told on your channel are much more positive than this, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to focus on the pot. I know there's man, there's so much like super dark stuff I heard people say and like laugh at and stuff and you know, and I know I got to talk about it at some point, but it's like I maybe it'll be a little bit. I've been writing them down and stuff, but it's maybe I think it's one of those things where maybe once things start to get a lot better, and then I feel like you know, so because while it's still like that, it's maybe a little harder to. I feel like I'd be bumming people out too much. Whereas like
Hmm.
I try to have some happy stories mixed in, like my two most recent videos are like two love stories I encountered on campus, and like
Hmm.
I ran into that quite a bit, and like sometimes it didn't go great for people, but you know some people it worked out okay, and they were happy and stuff, and you know some people just got away from it, and it was just a little stressful point in their life where they gained some weight, and hopefully that'll be me.
Right. Well, here it is. Yeah. So
Oh
Isabella and the blue hair.
yeah,
I I think I've seen both of those. Well, I've definitely seen the blue hair one because it says I've seen it.
yeah,
I have seen
yeah.
I have seen the other one as well, but it's just
My
not
my
telling me.
friend made the 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 thumbnail for the blue hair one, and then I was taking that was my first thumbnail I tried to make was the other one, trying to follow the same sort of format.
Right, yeah. We need some of the words to be in red. Definitely
Yeah,
red. Red is important.
yeah, yeah. It's I have a couple more like well, and I have a lot of stories from school, I guess, but yeah, they're it's certainly a wild ride. But I think stuff is getting better. When I was leaving school, there was a lot of like Gen Z coming in, and
Mm,
they were quite a bit different, shall I say? So
yeah.
quite a bit of a snapback. Um,
Mm,
yeah,
that's good to hear. Yeah.
yeah,
I suppose like the young people always challenge orthodoxy. And
mhm,
this is a whole new orthodoxy. So obviously
yeah,
the next generation are going to challenge it in their own way.
yeah. I think also a lot of people with issues with sort of conservatism in the U.S. have issues with Christianity, at least for my generation,
Mm,
and I think you know, and I think maybe it's certain like interpretations of it that people don't like when you're going through puberty and you're super like hormoned up, and you hear that the Christianity says all sex is evil.
mm,
That's not going to be popular with
right.
you know people going through that. But at the same time, like that's only certain interpretations. Like Mormonism, for example, they're super big on sex, as you might expect from something that kind of started as a sex cult. Uh,
Yeah. Right.
I mean, but they have like a really healthy view on it, and like someone was telling me they they were like telling me funny stories of like making fun of like religious people or something, and one of their friends was Mormon, and so their friend was trying to show off and show off for his friends. Some people like misbehave more when their friends are around just to like show that they're cool. And so he was like, "Hey, mom, you and dad have a lot of sex?" And then she's like, "Oh yes, yeah, every night, at least once a day, as God intended. Since we're married, we have to have lots of sex." And it's like, you know, I think if that idea is like bounced in front of a kid who's going through puberty and is like worried about, being ashamed of it or not quite knowing what's going on, and then hearing Christianity hates you for that, I think it's, some different perspectives and stuff. I think, I don't know. So definitely there was a lot of people in my generation had a big like atheist boom.
Mm.
Um, and I think that, I don't know. I mean, but we kind of got rid of Christianity and replaced it with this, and
Mm.
I don't feel like this has made very good movies.
Well, no, it hasn't at all.
Yeah.
No. We've seen the best of them so far, and they're not very good.
Like I was talking to my cousin and what movies he watches, and he just rewatches like 300 and Gladiator. Just a lot.
Yeah.
Like, that's his, you know.
Mm. Well, things will inevitably swing back, and they'll get a bit
I've
better.
seen a
But
lot of it. Yeah. It's kind of, it feels very oppressive, and I can see like, whenever you're trying to like sign up for any sort of account or whatever, like even like my bank sent me like an email that was like, you cannot spend money on anything relating to violence or like hate or something. And it was like, what are you talking about? You just hold the money. It's my money.
right.
It's like, and if you can't spend money on something relating, it's like, it's like broadly worded so they can just ban you for whatever.
Yeah.
And they're saying anything related to violence. Can you buy anything that isn't related to violence? Like if I buy a fork,
Mm.
is that related to violence because someone's been stabbed to death with a fork? If I buy a kitchen knife, if I if I buy a Netflix subscription, there's certainly violence on there,
Hmm. Right.
so it's like, and if words are violence, can I,
Can you buy a
can I,
book?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think that sort of, it feels like this big squeeze on people. And I know it certainly affects people. Like, I was signing up for some account for like freelancing or whatever, and they have this like special tab where you can boost yourself if you can check any check boxes of diversity, and they
Mm.
have, they have certain, like, even like you go on Etsy and they have filters. You can filter out white people and just search for black owned. Um, and it's like, it feels like a big squeeze, but I think people kind of conflate big tech and like big businesses that are taking a lot of money from certain investors as the whole world, and it's really not like that. Like if you scroll through a comment section, you'll kind of see a lot of people upset with stuff now, whereas
Yeah.
they didn't used to be. And there's not as much censorship as there used to be. Like people don't get banned as fast, I don't think,
Mm.
so you can catch quite a glimpse of people sort of not believing the normal stuff, and not normal, the very abnormal stuff. You know,
Hmm. All
so
right. Well, on that slightly more uplifting
yeah,
sort of tone,
I know.
we will.
Whenever I talk about school, it feels so. It's like so depressing. But I think stuff is getting better. There
Yeah.
was quite a few students like that popped in at the end that were like very against everything. I don't know how
Mm.
many would become sophomores or, you know try to work at the school and change things, but there's sanity around.
Hmm.
And there's good fantasy around. At least you don't have
Oh yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yes. Well, yeah. On the topic of good fantasy, yeah, we have. Yeah. So, where can people find your stuff? Where can people find you? Get in touch, etc.
Well, I guess the social media I'm the most active in, I think, is probably mine's, but I'm also, I guess I have a Twitter. I just don't go on it too much, and I have an
Hmm.
Instagram. But
Hmm.
my books live on my website.
Hmm.
So there's that, and there's also the Horizon Quest campaign. If you guys are interested in
Hmm.
that,
Yep.
there's
There it is.
the I have the if you get my book, even from if you get any of my books from my website, I send them with a bookmark that I 3D printed. And the reason I 3D
Uh,
printed them is because my love
uh,
of minions actually in
yeah.
D&D, I
Show
wanted
that
lots of
again because I
skeletons.
tried to make you big, but I failed miserably at making you big. Those are
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So they're little sword bookmarks, and yeah, I learned how to 3D print because
Hmm.
I had a love of minions, and I wanted to make lots of skeletons. So how do you
Nice.
get the most skeletons? You could buy like bulk, like skeleton toys, or
Hmm.
you could 3D print them, and I decided 3D printing would be the way to go. And yeah, and then I was trying to learn how to make different stuff and fidget toys and whatever. So I figured out how to 3D print these bookmarks. And then I also the highest tier on the campaign is this fairy helmet, which
Ooh.
because the character the fairy lives in a helmet. So I thought this would be like a really cool little diorama for
That's
the
cool.
acrylic standee that's in there.
Nice. All right. Well, we have the Horizon Quest, we have the books, and we have your channel here on
Yeah,
YouTube. All right. For more tales of school, more uplifting than you might
yeah.
think.
Yeah,
Um,
I try to. At some point I know I have to cover the darker stuff, but I don't want to. I just
yeah.
want it. It's stuff is depressing, and I feel like people like they focus on it maybe too much. I do for sure. I'm very by nature pessimistic, and I try not to be.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah,
All right. Cool. Well, you can find me obviously on Minds. Well, I say obviously, you find me at Matt Walthouse Author on Minds. You find me at this YouTube channel that you're watching this on.
yeah,
Hello. Also at Substack, mattwaterhouse.substack.com, where things are things are hotting up. I'm putting a few short stories and things on there. There will
cool,
be some travel writing at some point um, when I get around to actually traveling. And all the books are on Amazon.
nice.
So Four Guardian series, Empire of Fire coming very soon, probably in June. And sci-fi, if you like that. Kodiak series. We've got Red Saints and the Eye of the Universe. All right, superb. All right, cool. So, take care, everyone. Lovely to meet you, Adam.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And I'll see you all next time.